Membez and Aleph 42a, last line. Kiva Eimer. Okay, we're in the middle of discussing Baal Hashar Naki. So the ox gets skila, a death penalty for killing a person, and the owner of the ox is Naki. He's clean. What does that mean? So the first interpretation we had was Naki means Naki Mechatzi Kaifer. He doesn't pay Kaifer. The second interpretation we had, which was the opinion of Rabbi Yehudah, was that the animal was prohibited from benefit. You cannot derive benefit from the animal. Second. Sorry, Rabbi Yehudah says, you're exempt from the payment of half kaifer, and the first opinion was Naki means the animal is prohibited. You cannot benefit from the animal. Now we get to the third opinion, which is Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva, Aimer, Naki midmei eved. You're exempt from paying for a slave. Okay, what does he mean? So what he means here is that typically with a slave, they give you a 30 coin penalty. It doesn't make a difference how much the slave is worth, but that penalty is paid only by an animal that's a muad, not by an animal that's a tam. The Gemara says, "V'neimer Rabbi Kiva l'nafshei." In other words, Rabbi Kiva had a question to Rabbi Yehudah before. Rabbi Kiva says that, in other words, Rabbi Yehudah says you're exempt from half kaifer. So Rabbi Kiva asks, "What do you mean you're exempt from half kaifer? The animal is worthless. The maximum payment of a tam is migufay. So the value of the animal is zero. So the maximum payment, therefore, is also zero. So Rabbi Kiva is saying you're exempt from paying the 30 coins from a slave. Let's say you did have to pay it. How much did you have to pay? Zero, because that's the migufay payments. So why doesn't that argument just as hold water just as much as it held for Rabbi Yehudah? Why is this question not difficult to Rabbi Kiva? Rabbi Kiva asks for Rabbi Lazar, how can you say you're exempt from Chatzi Kaifer when the animal's worthless and the maximum payment is the animal, i.e. zero? The same argument holds true with Rabbi Kiva. The maximum payment for the slave is 30 coins, but it's also the maximum value of the animal, which is worth zero. The maximum payment of the animal itself is migufay. Bring the dead animal to court, and you can get paid from an animal which is worthless. So what happened was the owner went ahead and slaughtered it before it was stoned. Kamash Malon, they don't have. In other words, I would think you'd pay from the carcass. Kamash Malon, you don't even pay the carcass. Since the animal is going to be killed, even though since the animal is going to be killed because it murdered, therefore the carcass it can't collect from the carcass. Even if it was slaughtered before it was stoned. According to Rabbi Yehudah as well. In other words, the Mishnah obviously is referring to such a scenario where the carcass was slaughtered. So Rabbi Yehudah says you're exempt from Chatzi Kaifer. That means you don't even pay the value of the carcass. So what was Rabbi Kiva's question to Rabbi Yehudah? If this answer is good for Rabbi Kiva, why isn't it good for Rabbi Yehudah as well? So the Gemara says, Hachanami, right. The Savar, Rabbi Yehudah holds, Dilma Isli, Taima Acharina, the Odef Mehai. One second. Okay, so the Gemara says if Rabbi Yehudah is also talking about a situation where there is a carcass to collect from, so then why didn't he? What's the question? So the Gemara says, "Hachanam, you're right. Rabbi Yehudah could have answered. We're talking about where the carcass was slaughtered, and therefore there is value to it before it was stoned, and perhaps you'd think you might be able to collect the carcass." 1 second. Yeah. Okay. So therefore, and therefore, Rabbi Eliezer says, no, there isn't even chatzi kaifer. I just want to explain something for a minute, which I missed out before. If you remember from yesterday, we spoke about 2 days ago, we spoke about Bala Shornaki, meaning an animal that's stoned is prohibited to derive benefits, even if it's slaughtered before it's stoned. Now that is all true if the animal was slaughtered, though, after the court decreed that the animal would be killed. Over here, we're talking about it where the animal was slaughtered before the court made that declaration or that determination. If that's the case, it's not yet prohibited to derive benefit. You could benefit from the carcass. So you might think you should be able to collect the 30 coins of a slave from the carcass, or you might be able to collect chatzi kaifer. So that's where Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Kiva come in and say no. The Torah excludes that payment by Tam. Okay. So the Gemara says, okay, so those Rabbi Eliezer could have answered just like Rabbi Kiva. But Rabbi Eliezer says, listen, I might have a better response. And let me see if I can find a better response first. The name of land I'll tell it. Rabbi Eliezer nami lishni leishikolim b'shachtu. Why doesn't Rabbi Eliezer resolve it the same way Rabbi Kiva did? So Rabbi Eliezer would say, Hasam hu dineschav and laharagas behema v'haragas adam. Yeshor lav barkatolahu klal. 1 second. Okay, so in other words, Rabbi Eliezer does not want to say the pasuk refers to a scenario where he's slaughtered it before it went to court. He'd rather say it's the following scenario, like we explained previously. It's where the animal did not have the intention of killing a human being. It intended on killing an animal. And what happened? The animal ended up killing a human being. We'll soon see, probably on Shabbos or the next day, on Sunday, we'll see that in order to pay kaifer, in order for the animal to be killed, the animal must have had intention of killing a human being. Okay, so the animal is not killed. I would think the animal should at least have to pay kaifer. It's the kolamute, so therefore I need a pasuk to tell me that no, the animal doesn't pay kaifer either. But in a scenario where the animal will be killed because it did have intention of killing somebody, even if it was slaughtered before the court case, you don't need a pasuk to exclude that. Presumably because the court case itself will convict the animal, thereby making the carcass prohibited. If the carcass is prohibited, obviously you can't pay kaifer because the kaifer is coming from a carcass that's useless. So it therefore couldn't be paid. Okay. Well, so the Gemara continues. Okay, so the Gemara goes back. If that's the case, in other words, the Gemara is explaining Rabbi Kiva. There is no Rabbi Kiva's question on Rabbi Eliezer. Why do I need to exempt you from any payment if the maximum payment is a useless carcass? Now, according to Rabbi Eliezer's response, the carcass is useless even before the end of the court case, because the court case will surely convict the animal, and therefore the carcass will indeed be useless. Well, that argument is true in Rabbi Kiva as well. Well, Kiva nami vadi hachi hava. So why do I need a pasuk to tell me the carcass is useless? That you don't have to make a payment before when the animal is slaughtered before the court case. If the court case happens and the animal is convicted, the animal is also useless, and therefore you also would not have to pay the 30 coins of a slave, because the 30 coins of a slave. Because the maximum payment is a useless carcass, which is a value of 0. Okay, Ravasi says, "Hi Milson mi pi de gava Rav Shmueli umana Rabbi Yossi Reb Chanina." So Rashi says that I've heard this response from a great man, Rabbi Yosef Chanina, and he explained as follows: Salak de Chamina, I would think. However, Omer Kiva aftam shechavel ba'adam b'shalom b'meiser nesek shalom mishtalam namid me'evan ma'alya kasser rachmana bala shornaki. Okay, very simple solution here. We've mentioned this in the past. It's a machlokes if you have a tam, short tam that assaults a human being. The consensus opinion is the animal makes a half payment. However, Rabbi Kiva says you pay the full value of the human being. Well, if you pay the full value for nezek, then presumably you'd pay the full 30 coin penalty for killing an evet as well. And that's what Rabbi Kiva says. No, a tam that kills a slave, the animal is killed, and you do not pay the 30 coin penalty. And you can't ask me a question, what about the maximum value of the animal? Because no, according to Rabbi Kiva, there is no limitation of migufai when an animal assaults a human. So it's a very nice interpretation. There's just one problem. Rabbi Kiva has already broken his own interpretation. In Tanya we learned, Rabbi Kiva says, you're right, I say you pay full payment, but you might think you pay the actual full payment, not limited by migufai. We're back to square one because Rabbi Kiva admits now that the full payment of assault for a human, even if the animal's a tam, is limited by migufai. It's limited by migufai, back to the original question. Again, according to Rabbi Kiva, why do I need a pasuk to tell me that you are exempt, that a short tam that kills a slave is exempt from 30 coins? I know he's exempt from 30 coins. You know how I know? Because the maximum payment is migufai. And how much is the value of the animal? No value at all. There's no value to the animal at all. So of course you're exempt from 30 coins. The animal is going to be killed, either because the court has ruled it will be killed, or because the court will rule that the animal will be killed. So the animal, the value of the animal is no value at all. So of course you don't pay anything because there is nothing to pay from if you're limited by migufai. But back to square one, what is the interpretation of Rabbi Kiva? Rava says itzrach. Rabbi Kiva is still saying something new here. I might have thought. In some ways, a slave here is treated stricter, with more stringency than a blind man. And what is that stringency? Okay, so you have an animal, let's say it's a tam, let's say it's some wood, it doesn't really make a difference. If you have a free man that is not very useful for work, he can't even pack bags in Safeway. When I was younger, that was always my teachers trying to give an explanation for what takes the least amount of intelligence to do with packing bags. Okay, except the local supermarket was called Goldberg's. See, packing bags at Goldberg's. Okay, maybe there are jobs that require even less intelligence. But a person who is so useless, he has very minimal value, because very minimal financial value. If you tried selling him as a slave on the slave market, he would be worth very small amount of money because he isn't very competent at anything. Okay, so let's say this guy is worth very minimal. He's worth 1 coin, and you damage him. How much do you pay? 1 coin. But a slave who gets killed in the equivalent circumstances, how much do you pay? 30 coins. So you see here that in certain ways, a slave is stricter than a free man. If the free man's worth 30 coins, you pay 30 coins. The slave worth 1 coin, you pay 30 coins. If that's the case, I would think I would think you'd also pay the value of the slave min haliyah from the you'd pay the value of the slave min aliyah, meaning you'd pay it from the most, you'd pay the full value of the slave. Even, in other words, a ben chayra, you would say, is limited by migufai. However, maybe a slave was not limited by migufai. How could it be possible that a slave is more strict than a free man? The answer is it is. A slave is more strict than a free man. So maybe you'd also pay me aliyah. You pay the full value. You pay the full because you pay the full value, therefore you pay the full 30 coins. So Rahmana Bala Sharnaki, that no, you don't pay 30 coins if the animal is a tam. Tiny Kav said to Rava, we have a brace that supports the opinion of Rava. Bala Sharnaki, Rabbi Kiva Aimer, Naki Midmei Evet. Rabbi Kiva explains you're exempt from paying the value of the slave. So the Gemara says, 1 second. The Torah says you have to pay for damages of both a slave and a free man. Just like a free man, when he's damaged by a tam, he pays maximum migufai. So too, when he damages a slave, he should also pay the same thing. He should also pay maximum difference of migufai, maximum damage of migufai. And moreover, there's another difference. A free man, you pay the full value. A slave, you pay a fixed 30 coins. So and just like the full value is we differentiate between tam and muad. Tam pays migufai and muad does not. Similarly, by a slave, we should also say that a slave, 30 coins, there should be a difference between tam and muad. So the Gemara says this kal v'chomer is not correct. Why? In other words, this argument that a slave should be differentiated between tam and muad regarding the maximum payment of migufai is incorrect. Why? We're stricter by a slave more than a free man. If a free man is worth 1, you pay 1. If he's worth 30, you pay 30. But a slave worth 1 coin, you pay 30 coins. So I might think there's no difference between tam and muad. Both of them pay me'aliyah. You should be chayiv the full amount, the full 30 coins, or the full value of the slave, even in a scenario where the animal kills him and migufa payment would be 0. Talmud Leimer Balasha Noki in Me'eved. A tam does not pay neither the full value of the slave nor the 30 coins. Okay, we'll get to it shortly, but we'll soon see there's a major opinion that says that where you wouldn't pay the 30 coins, you'd only pay the 30 coins where the animal will get the death penalty. No death penalty for the animal, no 30 coins. Then you would pay, if you're not paying 30 coins, you pay damages. And you might think you'd pay the damages min haliyah, full value of the damages, even by shartam. No, Bala Sharnaki, not only do you not pay the 30 coin penalty, you don't pay full damages either. You pay migufay. Which, if the animal is going to be murdered, is 0. If the animal is not, then the animal is. The Brisa says, "V'himis ish isha." Amr B'kiva. So the animal kills a man or a woman. So B'kiva says, "What's this coming to teach us? Im l'chayev al isha keish." You mean to say that both a man and woman who get damaged, you have to pay for both of them? The Torah already specifies, "Yigach shoras ish is isha." If an animal gores a man or a woman, so we already know that damages are equivalent whether it's male or female. El hakish isha ish, to compare a woman to a man. Ma ish nizakav liyarshav, af isha nizkeha liyarshaha. Okay. Just like a man, if a man is damaged and then dies, who gets to collect the damages? It's his kids. Just the fact that he died suddenly, not associated with the act not associated with the damages, doesn't exempt the guy who has to pay the damages from paying that damage. So therefore, he needs to pay the damages. It goes to his inheritors. Similarly, the same thing is true with a woman. If a woman gets damaged, then she dies for some other reason. That payment goes to her inheritors. Okay, so the Gemara says, "V'sav Rabbi Kiva Yaris Labal." Does Rabbi Kiva say that the husband does not inherit her? It goes to her other inheritor, her kids primarily. If not kids, her father. Vatanya the Brisa says, "V'yirish Isam Ikan Shabal Yirish Sishlei." Div Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva says that in other words, when the Torah explains the priorities of inheritance and says the husband, will inherit his wife, that means to say that the husband is the number one priority to a woman. A husband inherits his wife more, and he has higher priority than her kids. Okay, so why is it that her kids would get kaifer as opposed to her husband? So Amar Shlokish suggests like Amar Ella bekaifer Hayal ve'im Mishtalam Ella Achar Misa. Okay, this is a Gemara in Bava Basra's Kufidal, it looks like. Very complicated Gemara about Roy and Muchzik. We'll get to it a little further, so I have to explain it a little bit. Muchzik is very simple. Muchzik is exactly what the deceased owned at the time that he died. So for example, you have a father who dies and he has an outstanding debt. Okay, and he also has an ox. So the typical rule is a bechor, the firstborn son, he gets a double portion. That means if let's say there's 5 sons, you divide the estate into 6, right? And he takes 2 portions. Now, the bechor does not take roy; he only takes muhsik. That means that he splits the value. Let's say the ox is worth 300, right? So he gets 100 units of the ox. Well, the other 5 brothers each get. I'm sorry, the other 4 brothers, 5 brothers total. He takes 100. The other 4 get 50. Okay. However, when it comes to the debt, we'll soon see. It depends how the debt is paid. Okay, so this is really like not where I want to go. In getting the details of Roy and Muhsik, it's a very, very complicated Gemara in Bava Basra. It's a few blot long.
So in other words, if the firstborn gets the firstborn portion of the inheritance, you get a firstborn portion of the debt as well.
That would be the question. So the question is the debt Muhsik? Is it in the domain of the father when he died, or is it Roy, meaning it was coming to him but he didn't actually control it? So we'll soon see. There's a debate about this. Basically, one opinion says, look, if you paid cash, well, you lent cash, you got back cash. So the cash is muhsik. If you pay property, then no, you're not muhsik. The other opinion says, no, the contrary. You paid property is muhsik. Why? Because there's a lien on the property. So property, the bechor actually gets a double portion. But money of the property.
It's movable property.
Correct. Property meaning real estate. Yeah. The other opinion says no. Real estate, that's muhsik. But cash is not muhsik. Why? Because I lent you a $100 bill, you gave me back a different $100 bill. So $100 bill was coming to me, but I didn't actually own it. So the bechor would not get a double portion from cash. Okay, that's sort of debate. What is roy? What is muhsik? But clearly the concept.
If it's movable like cash, he doesn't get a double portion of the debt.
That's what I'm saying. That is a debate.
I see.
Muhsik means it's under his control. For example, if he has an animal at the time he dies, that animal's muhsik. There's no question. Nobody doubts that. But what is the question is when he sort of doesn't have it, but it's coming to him. A debt. Now, exactly how do we rule on a debt? It's a debate. We'll get to it in a moment. But everybody certainly agrees. The 2 major opinions there certainly agree that there is a way to pay back a debt, which means that you're not muhsik. You don't actually own the debt at the time you died. The time the father died, it was supposed to come to him, but he didn't actually control it. So the critical argument of Rish Lakish here is that kaifer is considered roy, not muhsik. Damage is muhsik, kaifer is not. Okay, so let's explain. You damage a woman, then she dies from a brain aneurysm. The payment for the damages, that was muhsik. It's as if the woman owned it, and it's inherited. It's inherited by her husband. However, if if the woman dies by a wild animal, a wild a wild ox, so then the payment of kafir, that's considered roy, comes to her after she dies, and therefore her kids get it, not her husband. Okay, my time. So basically, the Torah says if the person dies, then you kill the animal, and then im kafir yushas olaf, and then afterwards the Torah says, well, then you have to pay kafir. Meaning, after the person dies, then there is a payment of kafir. Meaning, at the moment he dies, there was no obligation to pay kafir. Kafir comes after he dies, and therefore kafir is considered roy, not muhsak. So Gemara says, "Umezakan layam Rabbi Kiva." Okay. So the Gemara asks on Rabbi Kiva. 1 second. But does Rabbi Kiva disagree with regard to damages? Vatanya, we learned Hika es isha v'yatsi yiladel. The people okay. So we're talking here about a payment for the value of the fetuses. They struck a woman and she miscarried. Nice and nezik with the isha, so the damages get paid to the woman, which may vladas, the payment for the fetuses, labal goes to the husband. Ein habal, there's no husband. So then nice and liyarsha, it goes to his inheritors. Ein isha, there's no, the woman dies. Nisenes liyarsha, it goes, the nizikin, the damages go to her inheritors. Haisa shifcha v'nishtachara. 1 second. Okay, so if the woman dies, the damages go to her. Now the question is, okay, I just got it. Okay, fine, perfect. Now, this line of the Gemara is a difficult part because the woman dies, her inheritors get her damages. Why? Should be her husband. If we're saying that the husband always inherits his wife's damages because it's muhsik, then this is the questions from this line. If the woman is not around, it goes to inheritors. Why does it go to inheritors? Okay, let's continue. She was a slave and she was freed. Or she was a convert, and she doesn't have kids. So basically, Zocha, the guy who damages, does not have to pay for the damages. He acquires his own damages. In other words, the woman dies without inheritors, so that her inheritance is ownerless, and therefore the damager does not need to pay. The question here is, though, why is it that the woman is getting the damages? The woman's inheritor is getting the damages if the husband's supposed to inherit her. It's a very simple answer. Amarabba begrusha, she was divorced. Rav Nachman says as well, begrusha, she was divorced. 1 second. If she's divorced, so the damages go to her, but the payment for the fetuses go to her husband. Why? Amri, the rabbi said, Grushanami tiflik bin mevadas. The fetuses, they should be split equally. Presumably, they both equally participated in creating the fetuses. So therefore, the payment for the fetus should be split. Half to the woman, half to the man.
Doesn't the Torah say that the payment goes
to the man?
The man, and
but they're divorced now. Maybe that's only when they're married. So, but precisely what you said. Amar Papa Torah zichsa to mevodas labala for the bola business. Truth of the matter is, the Torah specifically says the payment for the fetuses goes to the husband, even if the child was born out of wedlock. My timer, what's the reason? Amar Kroki kasher yashusal of bal isha. In other words, the impregnator of the woman. Baal means the impregnator, not necessarily the husband. Okay. So that's why the fetuses go to the husband and not to the woman. Okay. So now the Gemara goes to the sugya of Roy and Muhsik. 1 second. Okay. So now there's a debate here between Rabbah and Rav Nachman back to the Gemara I mentioned to you in Bava Basra. The firstborn collects Roy, collect Muhsik, not Roy. Double portion of Muhsik, not Roy. How do you define Roy and Muhsik? So Rabbah says, 1 second. Right. So the Gemara says we have an alternative possibility here. The Nukmala Rabbah and Shagov Mois, or Nachman Shagov Karka. According to Rabbah, why can't it be that the guy who paid the damages, he paid cash? And according to Rav Nachman, he paid property. And like we explained before, according to Rabbah, paying property, that's muhsik. Paying money, that's roy. According to Rav Nachman, the opposite is true. Paying money is muhsik, paying property is roy. So according to Rav, it's pay money. According to Rav Nachman, you pay property, meaning you paid roy, not muhsik. And then it doesn't go to the husband, even without the divorce. Even if she was still married at the time of the damages, at the time that she died, because they paid roy, not muhsik, so therefore goes to her inheritors. The Amar Rabba, Govu Karka Yeshloi, Govu Mois Einloi. Property is muhsik, so the firstborn does have a double portion. Govu Mois, the collected money, Einloi. They don't have a right to firstborn portion. From Nachman, Amar Nachman says the opposite. Govu Mois Yeshloi, Govu Karka Einloi. They collected money. That's muhsik. Property, Einloi. That's roy. You don't get it. So basically, so the simple answer is why can't, in other words, in order to explain why the woman's inheritors get the money as opposed to her husband, the simple answer is where they paid roy. So Amri Hani Milul B'nei Marav Aliv Rabbanon Kik Amri Hacha Karebi. 1 second. Okay. Without getting into too much detail, this debate basically does not apply here. Why? Because that debate is based on the precondition that you do not collect on the Bechor, the firstborn, does not collect on the increase in value of the estate from the time the father died until the time they split the estate. And Rebbe disagrees with that premise. And accordingly, both of these would be considered, any type of payment here would be considered muhsik, not roy. And therefore, it's not a relevant resolution. Okay, in other words, the entire debate here between money versus property, if it's roy or muhsik, is based on a premise that is completely inapplicable here, because our Gemara disagrees with the premise. And that premise is that the Bechor does not collect on the increase in value. And our Gemara disagrees. It says the Bechor does collect on the increase in value, in which case the debate between Rabba and Rav Nachman is moot. Everyone agrees that any type of payment would be muhsik, according to that opinion. Okay, next Gemara. Amar Shimon Lakish. Shimon Lakish says, an animal kills a slave without intention, you do not pay 30 coins. Why? Because the animal is not stoned. The 30 coins is paid to the master. The animal stoned. If the animal will be stoned, in other words, because it killed with intention, the owners pay. The owners pay 30 coins. The animal isn't stoned, therefore the owner does not pay the 30 coins. Amar Rabba says similarly, an animal that kills a free man, without intention, meaning no death penalty for the animal. So Potter Mikaifer, you're exempt from Kaifer. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Hashor Yisakal v'gam ba'al of Yumas. You kill the animal, then and the owners of the animal get killed. They don't actually get killed. In Kaifer Yishasalav, he pays the Kaifer payment. Kolzman shashar b'skila ba'al mishalman Kaifer. In a place where you in a time when the animal would be stoned, then you pay Kaifer. In ashar b'skila, in a ba'al mishalman Kaifer. If the animal is not stoned, the owners do not pay Kaifer. Abai asks, him is sure is plenty. A guy says, my animal killed somebody else's animal. A sure shall plenty, or killed somebody else's animal. Okay, so a guy admits my animal killed somebody else's animal, or killed another person. Then he makes a payment. What type of payment? Presumably kaifer. My love kaifer. In other words, he admits I admit my animal killed somebody. That means I pay kaifer. 1 second. But if you admit your animal killed is not sufficient to execute the animal, the offending animal, even if it was a muad. It doesn't really make a difference because both tam and muad, both animals are killed. So my life kaifer. So Gemara says, no, we're not talking about kaifer. Obviously, you wouldn't pay kaifer because the animal wouldn't be killed. We're talking about we're talking about financial payments. So you admit, in other words, there's no kaifer. Okay, fine, there's no kaifer. You still have to pay a financial payment, the value of the person. Idamim, if you're paying money, aim a seifa. Him is share avish plenty. Aim a shalma piatzmai. If he admits that his animal killed a slave, he doesn't pay the 30 coins. He doesn't make a payment. Presumably, what's he referencing? The idamim amaloi. If you're talking about money, not the 30 coins, you're paying a financial payment for a slave, then why wouldn't you pay the 30 coins? So Amar says, Amarle yechol l'shnu yelcha reish idamim v'seifa knas. The truth of the matter is, you're right. The Bryce is a little bit inconsistent. The second half of the Bryce is referring to the 30 coins of a slave, which is a penalty payment, because it doesn't make a difference the value of the slave. Any set payment is a penalty. So therefore, for a slave, because you admit to the damages, you don't pay, because if you admit, you don't make a penalty payment. But for a free man, you would pay a financial payment if you admit to the damage. And similarly to a slave, you would make a financial payment if you admit to financial damage. But the Bryce is not referring to financial damage, it's referring to the penalty. However, it's a difficult answer. It's not ideal to take the Bryce and cut it up into two components. And therefore, I'm not going to answer this answer to you. And it must be both parts of the Bryce are referring to financial payments. However, the exact resolution we'll get to tomorrow. Thank you again all for the gift, and we'll see you tomorrow morning, 7:30.